Hello friends, and welcome to the Scrapbook and Cards Today YouTube channel. My name is Krystal, and in today's video, I am so excited to share some tips and tricks for how to use a traditional scrapbooking collection in a pocket page layout. I'm going to be working in my 9x12 Project Life album from 2021 and specifically documenting a week where our family traveled to Mexico for my younger sister's wedding. Because I knew I was going to be working with a lot of brightly colored summary type of photos, I wanted to pull a collection out of my stash that reflected a lot of those same vibes. I'm using the super cool collection from Pink Fresh Studio designed by In a Creative Bubble. Now this collection is no longer available for purchase, but a lot of the same principles that I'm going to be using in my layout today with this collection will work with whatever collection you have in your stash as well. Now let's go ahead and dive into the process of turning this collection into a pocket page layout for Project Life. So after printing off my photos that I want to use in this week's Project Life layout, the first thing I'm going to do here is take my 12x12 papers and cut them down into usable elements for a Project Life pocket page layout. For some of them, that's going to be turning the paper into a card like this right here. I've got two of those gray and white striped pieces that I cut down to a 3x4 size. This I'm trying to determine if I can turn it into a 4x6, but it's just slightly too short. So instead what I'm going to do is take a piece of that later and use it in as a portion of a 6x4 card. And you'll see that as we get into the later parts of this process. Another thing that I really love about this particular collection, and something I look for when I am purchasing traditional scrapbook product like this, are these pages that have elements on them that I can cut out and use as layering pieces or as embellishments on my page. So this one right here has these like bulletin type of pieces where it looks like there's a piece that's washi taped down. And I love that I can use those and put some photos in them, or I could add journaling into them, or I could just use them as a piece of layering behind another element in my layout. For my particular layout, I'm going to choose one of those to use on a 4x6 journaling card, and the rest of them I'll set aside to use in a project at a later point in time. Now, I had a couple pieces that I was going to just throw in the trash. I don't really have a use for them, but then I noticed that the bottom of the bulletins, some of them had these typed out phrases. I thought those would be perfect to trim out and use as tiny phrase stickers. So I'll just add adhesive to the back of them, and then I can add those on top of my photos or as additional embellishments on my individual cards. So that is another tip I've got for you here, is when you are working with product where there is type on it, consider cutting that apart and using the sentiments as embellishments or as titles for your individual cards. Another page that I did earlier too, and I forgot to mention, had a pattern on the back of it that was a bunch of Polaroids, and I cut those out to use in my Project Life layout as well. I'm actually going to use 3 of the Polaroids and 1 of the bulletins. Now this page here, I thought would be really cool to cut into 3 3x4 cards or 3 6x4 cards, because it has these divided sections that are roughly 2 inches in height. So then if you have, or not 2 inches, they would be, yes, 2 inches. Because if you have 2 inches on the top and 2 inches on the bottom, that gives you 4 inches, which is the height of both the 3x4 and the 6x4 cards. So that was perfect. And it allows me to create a card where I've got 2 different stories on the one piece. So I could add 2 different photos in there, or I can add 2 different blocks of text into there. Now this paper here, I had an idea for what I wanted to create with this. I really love that layered up tag looking section on the left-hand side, and I wanted to use a portion of that as as a 6x4 card. So there you can see how I cut that down in order to keep part of the embellishment on the side, but then I have extra area to the right-hand side where I can then add my journaling. Then I wanted to take the rest of this paper and take the grid part and cut that into grid only cards. So I'll have a couple of 3x4 cards and I believe one additional 6x4 card that's going to have only the grid pattern. I love looking for opportunities to use really plain patterned papers like this for adding my text, because when you start to add journaling onto a layout, it starts to clutter things up. So in order to make things a little more appealing to the eye, I definitely recommend adding your journaling onto the plainer patterns and the more muted colors. However, this one right here, which is a little bit busier, it's still not super bold colors, like it doesn't scream busy, but the polka dots on it do make it a little bit busier. My idea for using that particular pattern in my layout is to add some vellum on top of it and then to put my journaling on top of the vellum. So the vellum is going to create a barrier. It's going to help mute down the colors and mute down the pattern so you can see the text, but so you can still see portions of the paper and still appreciate the pattern that the paper has on it. That is one of my favorite ways to use patterned papers in my Project Life layouts. So now that I have all of my pieces cut out and ready to go, I'm going to start placing things where I want them to go, and then we'll grab my photos to put into place. So you'll see here how I've got the grid pattern that's going to create this really consistent feel throughout my entire layout here. And then you can also see the 3 Polaroids that will go across the middle section, and then there's a bulletin at the top. That's going to give me homes for more of my photos. Now that I have my cards and my photos and those larger pieces, the Polaroids and the bulletins, placed around my layout, next I'm going to go into some of the embellishments that I had purchased in this collection. One of the things I really loved in this particular line of scrapbook products were the acetate or plastic speech bubbles. I picked out 3 of them, or 4 of them. I actually think there's 4 on here. Some to use as embellishments on photos, and then one that you can see down at the bottom that's actually going to serve as a title piece for a 6x4 journaling card. Now, to help that speech bubble really pop off of the page, I took a slice or a piece, a strip is probably the word I'm looking for, of the gray and white stripe pattern, and added that at the top portion of the 6x4 card. So that is about 1.5 inches in width there, or in height. So it's 6 by 1.5, if that makes sense. Now I did that because I wanted to repeat the pattern from my title card, which my title card is just going to hold the dates for this particular week inside of my Project Life album. So I don't really put any other type of title, just the dates. Because I have chosen to use the pattern card as my date/title card, I also wanted that pattern repeated in at least one more place on my layout. I probably would have preferred to have it at least 2 more places, so it was repeated on this layout 3 times, but I ultimately decided to just have the strip there at the bottom and then the main card there at the top, and just left it at that. Now, the strip of pattern paper gave me a home to put a title piece, and then I also included the camera die cut as well. Once I had all the speech bubbles figured out for placement, then I went in and grabbed some of the cardstock stickers that I had pulled aside and some of the paper die cuts that I had pulled aside. I also brought back over the phrases that I cut out of that larger 12 by 12 paper and added those in a couple of places as well, just using them as though they were tiny phrase stickers. Then I went ahead, added my journaling onto the layout. So a lot of these pieces I printed directly onto the paper, like the two-tone green card there at the top. I also added a little bit of journaling to the bottom portions of the grid paper where the Polaroid photos are going to live. I added some to the 4x6 card that has the tag-like pattern on the left-hand side. And then also I printed some on vellum that I could add to the polka dot card at the top of the page. Now that I have my journaling on there, it's just a matter of sticking everything down where I want it to go. A couple of things that I want to draw your attention to as I'm working through sticking everything down on this layout. One is that I created a consistent-ish type of embellishment treatment for various photos on my layout. So in the photo at the top where my sister and my brother-in-law are getting married, you can see that I have one of the plastic speech bubbles. I have one of the paper die cuts that's done in kind of a tiny phrase-ish shape, or, like a very thin banner. And then I also have a sticker, a cardstock sticker speech bubble as well. So that's going to be my cluster, or my cluster treatment, maybe is what I'll call it, for my layout as a whole. So as I'm working through some of the other photo elements, you're going to see those same pieces come about. And that helps to keep everything really cohesive. Another thing that I did was I took a couple of the smaller phrases, these two right here, and I'm using them as titles on that card. So I knew what I was going to do before I added my journaling there. One of them says currently, and one of them says fun and games. So I used those two titles as prompts for my journaling that I added into the two-tone green card. I will also take all three of those Polaroid pictures, and I'm going to add a photo into the middle where the picture portion of the Polaroid would go. And then I have three different titles. One says fun, one says fave, and one says love, that I'm going to layer underneath the phrase portion of the Polaroid. And then I also grabbed a tiny phrase, I'm air quoting this, a tiny phrase sticker that I'm going to add above the title pieces onto the photos themselves. So the one with my daughter holding the ball, that one says having fun. This one right here, I've got a picture of just a selfie of myself. I can't read what it says right at this moment, but that one has a like two strips of words, and then there was also one on that last one as well. So for this, I'm just going to layer up all of those pieces. Because I'm working with the speech bubbles that are made out of plastic material, I actually don't want to adhere that with adhesive, because you'll be able to see that through the plastic. So instead, I'm using my Tim Holtz tiny attacher to attach on the speech bubbles. I am also using my tiny attacher at the topmost portion of the Polaroid picture. I wanted them to look as though they were stapled on there in place, even though they are actually adhered down on the back side with roller adhesive. So it's more for just a decorative element and to help tie this entire layout together, since all of those plastic speech bubbles will be stapled, and then all of the Polaroids will be stapled. So it just creates a sense of cohesion across my layout. For the photos that are just a plain photo, they're not cut up, they have a white border around them. For those ones, I chose to just add a couple of tiny phrases at the bottom section. Some of them are stickers, some of them are the ones that I cut out of the paper, and then I also added some of the plastic speech bubbles to those as well, just stapling them on there. And because those speech bubbles are fairly large, I have them interact with the edges, and then I'm just trimming off the excess once I have it where I like it. This one right here, this little bulletin board, I originally cut down my photo so that it covered up the entire center of the bulletin board, but then I decided that I actually liked some of the orange peeking out. So you'll see I will bring my trimmer back over again and actually trim off extra so you can see a bit of the color around the outside of the photo. I really like that, and I feel like that would be, if I had a board where I was going to put photos on it in my office, I probably would leave a little bit of the edge around it anyway. So it just felt a little bit more real, I suppose. I'm also adding the OMG speech bubble there. That one is a die cut, and I just liked that it brought over some of the speech bubble consistency to this part of my layout as well. And also, you know, it's nice and orange and bright, and I like the font. So it worked out real nice. The vellum portion there, I cut down so it's just slightly, there's just a tiny bit of space at the top and the bottom of the vellum, because I'm also going to staple this into place. Mostly because, again, I don't want to see the adhesive behind the vellum. I want it to just be attached in a more natural way, so my text is not muddled up in any way. And then for my title card here, I'm going to use my roller date stamp, add the dates for this week, which would have been November, I want to say 8th through the 13th or so of last year. I'm adding that into a label sticker, which I will put into the middle of this striped card. I didn't particularly like the thumbs up on there. It's cute, I suppose. It would have been fine. But instead, I'm actually going to take this camera and use that instead. All right, friends, that completes my layout for today. I hope this was helpful to see how to turn some of those traditional scrapbooking products into pieces that are super usable inside of pocket page scrapbooking and inside of Project Life. I had so much fun with you today. Thank you so much for stopping by, checking out this process video, and getting all the inspiration. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will catch you later. Bye, friends.